Loneliness. You've experienced it, I've experienced it, everyone on this planet has experienced it. But sometimes loneliness has been a bigger threat to our society than usual. Let me ask you this. Think about this. Why do you think loneliness is so pungent right now? Well, let's try and figure it out. So I think it's safe to say that loneliness has been an emotion since humans, we're humaning. It's always been an emotion, but there have been greater amounts of loneliness at a time, and I think today's one of those times. 36% of Americans and over half, 61% of young adults report serious loneliness. Well, you gotta take this with a grain of salt, and it's a small sample size of 950. Even having numbers of over half show that something is definitely wrong. So why is there a loneliness disease, and why is it increasing into the younger generation? I think it's quite difficult to say a direct origin to isolate something, but I think I can give some examples that don't help, and I bet you could too. Stuff like gamifying relationships, especially when people are trying to get more personal, and you have commodification of relationships like internet personalities like Twitch or YouTube. With celebrities before, there was a barrier of entry to know them personally, but now with Twitch or YouTube, you can spend hours and hours and get these deemed parasocial relationships in which you're friends with someone but they don't even know you, at least so you think, right? And that creates a huge problem with lonely people, and you can see why it's a problem, right? And there's other issues, I bet, that create the perfect loneliness disease, and I would say one thing is perhaps a wage stagnation. We know it as kind of like the wage slave, wagey type thing. And I think a perfect video by Umami titled McDrivin, I'll put in the video, I'll show it after. It shows the isolation and loneliness of the feeling of being trapped in a wage stagnant job. And if you combine these with the death of religion, which I think, we'll get to that, it's pretty important. You have social media, you have some spices like addiction, and you get this modern nihilism that I'm going to call doomerism. And if you know the doomer, well, you'll get why. But if you don't know the doomer, there's many great videos that have explained what the doomer is. But put him short, he's this person who's lost hope, feeling it's futile to progress, is plagued by loneliness, addiction, I would say most of all hopelessness. And the doomer isn't just some caricature made by the internet. In the East also, they're experiencing something like this, and the Chinese have a word for this, calling it neijuan, or involution. Sorry, that was terrible, whatever. But the doomer represents the youth, right? And the plague of loneliness on society, they're isolated. And with this isolation, you see so many people relating to another facet of internet culture, the literally me character. And if you don't know the literally me character, well, think of movies like Taxi Driver, Nightcrawler, Blade Runner, Joker, and I think most importantly, you've probably seen American Psycho. We can call these Sigma characters, but don't lose yourself in the humor. This identification with the character, the oh wow, he's literally me. Like, most of these characters are isolated. They're not within society. They're lonely, and this is kind of what the doomer represents. And I would say the disenfranchised lonely man. I won't write off loneliness for like youthful women or even older women, because I mean, of course, everyone gets lonely, because it seems like it's mostly plagued the youthful men. This identification with the character, the literally me person, shows that these people are isolated, they're lonely, they're pessimistic, and it just goes to show again the loneliness that's plaguing society. So has loneliness always been a problem, even the doomer ideology? No. If you didn't catch that, no. I'm not making no new revelation. And I think it's important to note that a renowned philosopher, if you know him, Nietzsche, he knew that with the death of God in the West, there would be no glue to hold society together, and with no glue to hold the society together, He knew that meaning for many would cease to exist, and in place of meaning, you would get meaninglessness, because if you have no meaning, right, you get a dread for life, and, as we know it, nihilism. Now, for Nietzsche, his solution to nihilism, and I suppose loneliness as well, is the Ubermensch, or the Overman, the Superman, whatever. Let's just call it the Ultimate Man, whatever. And from my understanding, Nietzsche wanted the Ubermensch to be someone who's concerned with this life, because if you don't believe in any religion, anything, well, you concern yourself with this life on this earth. You try to be the best person you can on this earth, the most moral, the most true to yourself. And maybe Nietzsche was saying to live according to your nature. So Nietzsche had one solution. There was another person in the West. I suppose if you call Russia the West, but we can go to Dostoevsky, an author in around Nietzsche's time, about 20 years before him born, and Nietzsche actually admired. Nietzsche learned from him as a psychologist. So yeah, Dostoevsky was born a few decades before Nietzsche, and although Nietzsche was one of the maybe few to see nihilism rise, Dostoevsky showed that there was a huge deal of nihilism already in Russian society. And while this is a huge thing with Russia, it's often a conflict point between Western Europe and kind of Eastern thought. There's a lot of reflection that can be seen in Russia that can reflect the West as well. And yeah, with Dostoevsky, many of his characters have nihilistic viewpoints on life, like most notably like Raskolnikov, the Underground Man, and people like Ippolit. That's how you say it. So yeah, the Underground Man, he is basically the modern day literally me. Imagine like the Patrick Bateman. He's kind of like that. He was the original literally me character, and he's nihilistic. He's given up on hope, and he's an age doomer, I would say. So Nietzsche knew that nihilism would be on the rise, and while he posed his solution to be kind of the Ubermensch idea of focusing on this world only, becoming the best you can, Dostoevsky thought the meaning was for Eastern Orthodox. So there's a big emphasis both with Nietzsche and Dostoevsky. Well, religion obviously holds a great deal of power in society. They both agreed on that. But the thing was, they disagreed on the solution to the problem. Why does religion create such an intense social fabric that when it's gone, despair for life and sadness replace it? Well, I think you might already know. Without religion, there's no concrete set of beliefs, and thus meaning. Whether you believe in religion or not, it's obvious the meaning that it has given to those who believe in. In this case, most of the doomers, the lonely people, they're not religious. So you have a lot of nihilism, a lot of meaningless. So what do we do, right? Well, if we go with Nietzsche's route, we try to become the Overman, the Superman. And again, from my understanding, only worry about this life. Try to become the best, the most moral version of yourself. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Nietzsche's solution to nihilism can be uplifting. So if you're not religious, maybe his idea is something you want to try. It's quite vague though, and I think that might be due in part to my understanding. But even so, let's say that the Ubermensch idea is true. Because, it's better to listen to Nietzsche than me. It should be your goal then to find something to focus on and put all your energy in. And because with something like existentialism, you make your own purpose. Maybe your purpose is to live as a great father. Maybe your purpose is to live as a great son or be a great student. But the one thing is, without a purpose in life, you become meaningless, and that's of course what Nietzsche was trying to circumvent, and that's why Dostoevsky also was trying to point out the scariness of a loss of God in the Russian people. So I can't answer what the meaning of life is to you. I can just try to make your life a little less lonely, maybe by offering you some thoughts that can help you strive towards a goal. And goals don't need to be big, worldly shaping goals either, like I'm going to end world hunger. Maybe your goal is to become more attuned with nature, perhaps going on a walk every day. As long as you're progressing towards something positive and meaningful to you, then maybe it will give you a cope with life. Maybe Nietzsche knew it was something like the Übermensch, leaving it to be vague. He gave his idea of what existentialism was to him, asserting that you create your own meaning in life and that there is no correct solution. For some, it's Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch. For others, it's Dostoevsky and religion. But you have to choose, right? So if you're lonely, realize that you're not alone. Maybe you want to be an Übermensch, maybe you want to be religious. All I know is life without meaning is life on like really hard difficulty, right? And loneliness is something that's going to plague many, and it will continue to plague many. And maybe even if my words are worth even a little, don't give up. Keep trying, even if it seems futile. Thank you. So yeah, what do you think Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch was? What do you think of Dostoevsky? Is religion a viable way to deal with nihilism? Let me know. Thank you.